in the public school world, it's full of guarantees. The private school world, you have to deliver to keep your customers. But what COVID did is it really shook up, I think, the public school establishment, because they actually saw about 1.5 million public school kids leave the system. Many of them going to homeschooling. The proportion of students homeschooled, and we're not counting remote instruction, we're counting real, true homeschooling.
Just to clarify what you're saying, the majority of families who left public schools during COVID, the majority homeschooled.
Not necessarily the majority, but a big portion of that 1.5 million went into homeschooling. Another portion went into private schools that were open. So the charter school enrollments increased, but in some states, as long as district-run schools were locked down, public charter schools had to be locked down the same. And of course, the charter schools were clamoring to reopen. They wanted to reopen and serve students, but as public schools, they had to obey the orders of the state Department of Education. So they weren't able to reopen as quickly as they did, but still, their enrollments increased and their wait lists increased pretty dramatically too. And sadly, some of that 1.5 million in kids who left the public school district just dropped out and disappeared. Yeah, yeah. And so we've lost those children. Yes, we've lost those children.
Can you talk about the consequences when a child drops out of school? What does that mean for the taxpayer? What does that mean for our country as a whole when a person is no longer being educated and not graduating from high school?
A high school diploma is a crucial milestone for a young person and is highly predictive of many life outcomes, positive life outcomes. So conversely, high school dropouts, dropping out of high school is highly predictive of a lot of negative outcomes. High school dropouts are much more likely to develop a criminal record. They're much more likely to be on public assistance. They tend to earn, their lifetime earnings are about $1 million less than someone who gets a high school diploma. Their lifespan is shorter. They don't live as long. You don't live as long if you drop out of high school. Your likelihood of getting married is much lower because, I mean, in many cases, you're not viewed as marriageable. You're not impressive as a future spouse and partner if you didn't at least stay in school long enough to get your high school diploma. So dropping out of high school is a huge anchor around the neck of young people that stands in the way of their success. And the fact that the pandemic and the response of some decision makers to the pandemic led to these high dropout rates and chronic truancy rates also. Tom Dee of Stanford University just yesterday released a study on how chronic truancy rates are way up. Even after the public schools reopened, kids did not consistently return to class. And the consequences are just going to be dire for our country in terms of citizenship behavior, in terms of economic productivity. We're going to have a lost generation in many respects.